Looks like Allan George is today's service. Yeah. Put his headset over on his chair.
No, actually, shaking
I
it, and
was
I'm like,
Yeah.
You found us okay? Look at you with your big old water. I mean, that's
Yeah. I've been trying to drink a lot more water recently, you know, kind of dehydrated. See, this is the book.
okay.
that-
I'm familiar with the tagging system.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what this is actually. I don't know what. But this is the section that.
The only thing that I thought might not make sense to people is the reference to her nephew. I'm assuming that that's.
I mean, I don't even I've read the book and I
Oh,
don't
really?
know that specifically. So like the way that she writes, she has or her books. She has a website where she does blogs.
Okay.
So she'll often use her blog text.
I,
So I don't know specifically about her nephew.
yeah.
But like.
That was just something I
think
thought,
it's-
well, maybe.
It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's just gonna be written, so.
Yeah, and I like you're going to mention some of the stuff that comes before in your text.
Okay, cool. Do you feel most comfortable standing at a microphone, or do you prefer to have like a lavalier microphone?
Yeah,
Walk around
I think I'm just gonna stand here.
Okay.
Just because I literally write everything down and then just read it.
Yeah, that's fine.
So that's
Everybody's different with what they feel comfortable with, so. I'm the same way, I do the
Yeah.
same thing. Allan and our minister Randy will, they're like, they walk. So, and
I
I'm
got
like,
these
yeah, good for you.
it's like
Well,
stainless stuff.
I'm all about the purity and
Yeah.
the anchor of a podium. So, hey, Allan,
Hello. So good to meet you in person, for real. So
your headphones are on your seat. That thanks to Steve.
fantastic.
Your prop.
They're a little object culture. Yeah.
I think I've got some
Oh,
Chalice,
fantastic.
but I don't know what it does. I didn't get a
One of
chance
the
to
things
ask
she
her.
definitely does is she's one of the co-chairs of the Impact program.
One of the chairs of the impact.
Yeah. She also helps with HR stuff. Those are two things I know,
Okay.
but you know,
And I know she's a delegate this year. That's,
So then there you go,
That's
then
why
that's
she's
the
in
third thing.
contact with me.
understood.
Chairs. The impact. Could you point her out if you
Yes, if I see her. Obviously, if she's here to let the chalice, then you'll notice her.
Yeah, well, because she
Lighting the
wanted
chalice
to
up.
do the announcement about the, and I'm just like, I didn't want to create another thing, so I said, okay, if I do it.
Yeah.
I said, the only time, unless you want to do it earlier, and you can do it when you do the chalice. She said, well, I don't actually have to do it, but I can do the chalice. I'm like, cool.
Gotcha.
So, well, that's what we're doing. And then she said, she helps with the HRs.
Yeah. I would say the staff benefited from her HR expertise.
Okay. Helps with the resource to our HR,
Sure. Yeah.
whatever.
However you'd like to phrase
However you
that.
want to say it. Okay.
We appreciate the stuff she does when it comes to
Support our HR
whatever.
efforts.
We don't have like obviously
Yeah.
resources for that otherwise. So
Right.
without it's her and Dan Tillman's who have background in this.
Okay.
But a very exciting day. I assume you'll have large numbers of people. So
Yeah.
I'm just excited and
So I don't know if I mentioned this when we were doing the stuff on Tuesday, but like I used to be a part of the Methodist Church.
Yeah.
I was in that for a long time, and then.
it's also my background, by the way.
Anyway, so I was in the Methodist Church until 2019. I was studying to be a deacon. Had already decided I didn't want to be an elder. I was a like licensed local pastor.
Yeah.
And basically, I came back from General Conference and was really like traumatized, hurt, grieving. And my congregation said that they were happy with what happened and that they were praying for the people who didn't want it. I was like, I'm gonna leave. So actually, it's been almost like 4 years to the day since the last time I preached. Yeah.
So consequential day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Well, that's yeah, and also I'm so glad that you could find a place to renew some of that work here. Yeah.
That's how I feel.
For sure. I appreciate that. Yeah. And also, the Methodist thing is real tough.
My mom was a Methodist pastor. I went to a Methodist school. It's like a whole thing.
Where were you studying that thing?
MTSO. Oh, nice. Cool. Yeah, no, I graduated in 2021 with a master's in practical theology and.
Then you know Tim Van Meter, my good friend.
Yeah. It was. Man, I just think whenever I think of Dr. Van Meter, I did, because it was during COVID, we couldn't go on our cross-cultural in person, so we did it online.
I thought of that.
And so we did our cross-cultural like the first 2 days of January of 2021, which was, like January 6th happened, literally smack in the middle of us, like being on this, like really intense Zoom calls all the time, and Dr. Van Meter was like, you can't just act like nothing's happening. And so we had to take
I'm
a
so
day.
sorry that happened, because that cross-cultural element is such a rich part of that program.
Yeah, I really, I'm hoping in the future to be able to go with them, because some of those, let other people concepts.
I was with them on my first trip, which was to India, so that was what you guys were still doing.
We were, so I was doing it with the social justice degree, which was new. I was like the first graduating class of that. It was going to go to Chiapas, Mexico, so we were going to meet the Zapatistas there and be a part of their space. And so I was excited about that, but alas, eventually, they're going to do it again.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, that time frame was just full of all kinds of.
Yeah.
I was doing work here when we had, our seniors who get to graduate or go to prom and do all these very key things. Exactly.
I think a lot about I studied language arts education in my undergrad, and I took adolescent psychology, and so I think a lot about how there's no clear signs of ending adolescence for people these days, and then especially you don't have senior prom, you don't have graduation, then it just it feels like it never ended. I in some way feel like I'm still in school.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Maria.
I'm Kelly.
Good to see you, Kelly.
Yeah.
I just came across this great passage here. Technical civilization is man's conquest of space. So I'm frequently seen by sacrificing the central ingredient of existence, namely time. We spend time to gain space. That's our power. Our main objective. That war does not mean to be war. The power we take terminates abruptly. Borderline
Oh, wonderful. I'm good, Jack. How are you? We were talking about Sabbath as, I think he uses the phrase cathedral time. It's like when things are not like ours time.
I know you want to clap. Because I do. Where I was never sure about that in church, are we? My name is Amy Collins. I'm a worship associate and a commissioned lay minister of this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Cleveland. I bid you welcome, whether you're here in person, whether you're watching us live virtually as things unfold, or playing catch up at a later date and time, catching the service recorded. In case you're new to our community or to Unitarian Universalism, let me tell you a little bit about us. As Unitarian Universalists, one of our core principles is recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every person. As a community, we recognize the interconnected web of all existence. As a pluralist faith, we're happy to have you join us whether you celebrate the earth, the goddess, love Jesus, follow the teachings of the Buddha, or find your inspiration and comfort from the reliability of science or humanist teachings. Our covenant with one another transcends race, gender identity, sexual identity, financial means, age, and all the other elements of who we are that some might use to divide us. We especially welcome any guests who are worshiping with us for the first time today, and if you're interested in more information about who we are, we invite you to fill out one of the guest cards in the pew rack in front of you, or you can that you can put in the offering plate when it comes around later in the service, and we'll be able to reach out to you to answer any questions you might have about our congregation. If you're watching from an internet platform, you can go to our website, uucleveland.org. On the back of your order service is a QR code. It'll take you to our contract tracing form. Please take a moment to complete that before you leave today. That's for COVID purposes. We're not completely out of the woods. And we're about to enter into sacred space, so please take a moment to silence your phones or any other electronic devices that might make noise. I'm delighted to welcome our guest service leader this morning, Kelly Fox, who uses they, she pronouns. They're a community organizer and healer in Columbus, Ohio, so thank you for making the trip. They are passionate about education, community care, and healing from personal and collective trauma. At Faith Choice Ohio, they've worked to build community by holding online book clubs, leading self-managed abortion and restorative and transformative justice trainings, as well as co-hosting and editing the Our Soul podcast. After studying literature and creative writing at Ohio Northern University, Kelly continued their education at the Methodist Theological School in Ohio. They earned a master's in practical theology with a specialization in queer feminist and humanist studies and a master's of social justice. Kelly also worked as the development coordinator at If, When, How, a national organization lawyering for reproductive justice, advocating for reproductive freedom, and funding bail and strong defense for people who are prosecuted for allegedly engaging in self-managed abortion. At If, When, How, Kelly works to support the movement through clean data and efficient fundraising systems. Kelly is committed to the liberation for all people and hopes to end the pressure to conform to the rigid expectations of society. An activist with multiple marginalized identities, they seek to lift up all people through love, writing, spirituality, and service. With their passion for building community, Kelly is committed to building coalitions based in trust and solidarity. Their cats, Moses and Florence, keep them company, as well as their husband, Jordan. I find the sequence of that interesting. And I invite you to join me in our chalice lighting words on the yellow card in the pew in front of you as Kim Littell lights our chalice this morning. Kim is one of our delegates to General Assembly this year. She is one of the chairs of the Impact Program, and she's a huge help in our HR efforts with staff. We appreciate Kim. Thank you for lighting the chalice this morning. And join me. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here. I wanted to start today by sharing a short prayer from the Reverend Jade Kaiser. They have this website, it's called In Flesh, that has a lot of really great resources if you're ever looking for them. So, Spirit of fresh starts, of new beginnings, of renewal and restoration, we awake to your grace, embraced by love unconditional. With each morning, you birth new opportunities in us, around us. We are surrounded by sacred potential. There are so many ways to love. May we rise to the day's call, listen for the aches, to give voice to the beauty, to be a companion to justice.
Well, before we sing our opening hymn, which will be 134, Our World is One World, I invite you to stand and greet one another warmly. ice, Mike. Each week we pause in our service to share joys and concerns. We have a book over by our Joys and Concerns bowl where people are invited to write any joys or concerns that they have. And no one wrote any today, though I'm sure people have some in their hearts. So we're going to take a moment to invite people, a few minutes while we enjoy some beautiful music, to come forward and share, put a stone in the bowl to recognize any joys and concerns that you bring with you today. And if you are joining us online, we invite you to use the chat to share with one another there things that are going on with you. And certainly we hope that you'll also check in with each other later after the service and share live and in person with someone else if there's something weighing heavily on you. So I invite you to do that now. Allan will place a stone for all of those joys and concerns that were shared online, and another stone for all of those joys and concerns that have not yet found words that remain in the quiet sanctuaries of our heart.
Good morning. In case you are desperately curious, it's like 20 degrees cooler right over there. Just in case you were curious. I had the occasion recently to visit one of the truly profound, deeply spiritual religious sites in the Cleveland area recently. Definitely one of the ones that's probably most widely, touches most widely on people's spiritual lives for sure. It was the Container Store. That great temple. What an extraordinary religious monument in America the Container Store is. You go to a place that helps you feel like you can create order in your life by buying things that help you store all the stuff you've bought. And you come out feeling renewed, a new person, an entirely different creation. It's funny too because I don't mean this totally unseriously. Religious implements and like religious elements, here in a UU context, we don't have a ton of those around. We have that more sparse kind of religious sort of feeling, but many religions are defined by the stuff, the implements. We have some, we just use our stones. That's a religious implement that we would certainly use. We also like have a chalice. This is a religious implement. But of course, other traditions have more personalized religious implements, tools, things they wear. You think of like, things that are prayer beads that might be worn in various traditions, or of course, one of the ones I find most profound is the Sikh implements. In Sikh culture, you would have these elements, a comb, a bracelet, things that live out your spirituality, your values through things that you're doing. So with that in mind, of course, I was thinking of what religious implement I might find in the Container Store. And what I found, and I've come to treasure, is a little, it's a broom, a little counter broom with a little dustpan. This is where I swear, I'm not being totally unserious about this. Coffee is an important ritual in my life, and I have a coffee area where that is the place I do this practice, this crafting practice. And this is a way of tidying that space. It's special to that space, so this becomes an implement. So of course, just being curious about that and thinking about that, I was thinking of other religious traditions, and there is one extraordinary example of this in the Jain tradition. If you know about Jainism, this is coming out of southern India. It's sort of strands from Hinduism and Buddhism come together into a religion that regards life very carefully and very thoughtfully, with lots of dignity. And so the broom in Jain culture, especially among the monastic classes among Jains, they will actually have a broom with them that they use to sweep in front of them as they walk, so that they will cast away any small bugs or insects or things they might otherwise step on. Before they would lay down, they would sweep the area they were going to lay down, because an important part of their faith is that at no point in time do they do any harm to life. It's like a lived practice of care for life, this intentional brooming that they do with this special implement. Of course, today we are here to talk about reproductive justice. And a thing that has happened in the world we inhabit is that we have narrowed our understanding of life into this binary opposition where life is on the one hand and choice is on the other hand. And that's how we refract these senses of value. And that's one of the reasons I was so moved to learn so much from Jainism this week, because it reminded me that that binary is a thing we can also resist. Of course, in our own context, we have to respond to the urgency that's in front of us. But also, we can find ways to resist the idea that life is not something that we can find other ways to affirm, that we can't live out an ethic of life with habits and practices and things that we do to affirm life in contexts that are about flourishing and blooming and growing in other ways that are necessarily refracted through the language that has pinned down how we think about this. And then you start realizing, thinking about this in Jainism, in Sikhism, in these other world religious traditions, this wisdom of the ways that we can create lives that communicate hope, like a hope code, an aspiration for how we can live in a way that is affirming to what it is to be alive. And that's a version of living and life that we can take for ourselves, we can exemplify in the world. Even the Container Store helps me understand a certain way about ordering and taking care of life. So, to bring the analogy to its breaking point, suppose we took the great model of the Container Store and thought of ourselves as a place that could sell little hope codes, little hope containers. We could actually be the ones who purvey and foster those habits so that life is no longer this thing, this sort of weaponized thing in our political space, but it's something that is truly animated and at the center of the faith that we live out in the world.
Our reading this morning from Adrienne Marie Brown, We Are Touching the Future. We are touching the future, reaching out across boundaries and post-apocalyptic conditions to touch each other, to call each other out as family, as beloveds. All that you touch, you change. All that you change, changes you. We are making ourselves vulnerable enough to be changed, which, of course, change what Black existence means. Octavia Butler, who gave us that philosophical spirit poem, Earthseed, that I just quoted, is a bridge for many of us between the world and the narratives that pull us through to the next realm, or to the parallel universe, or the future in which we are protagonists. We are creating a world we have never seen. We are whispering it to each other, cuddled in the dark, and we are screaming it at people who are so scared of it that they dress themselves in war regalia to turn and face us. Because of our ancestors, because of us, and because of the children we are raising, there will be a future without police and prisons. Yes, there will be a future without rape, without harassment and constant fear and childhood sexual assault. A future without war, hunger, violence, with abundance, where gender is a joyful spectrum, where my nephew would not be bullied for his brilliant differentness, where each of our bodies is treated like sacred ground, whether we have insurance or not. Each week we take an offering that is donated to an organization that we feel lives out our values in the world. And this week it seemed opportune to make that recipient Faith Choice Ohio, and I'm going to invite Kelly up to share a little bit more about that organization.
So thank you so much for having me today. So today's offering is going to be supporting Faith Choice Ohio, which is an organization that I've felt very proud to be a part of for the last 3 years. Faith Choice Ohio is Ohio's faith voice for choice, as we like to call ourselves, and we work to advance reproductive freedom through breaking the stigma that people of faith are anti-abortion or bigoted. We know that many people of faith are for reproductive freedom and believe that abortion is a blessing. And we uplift faith voices and empower them to join us in the fight for autonomy. In June of 2022, we launched Ohio's first faith-based practical abortion fund called the Jubilee Fund. The Jubilee Fund provides practical support for abortion seekers, including support for transportation, hotel stays, childcare stipends, all the things that people don't really think about when it comes to needing an abortion, and of course, spiritual counseling. We train volunteers and we work together to make sure that people have access to the reproductive care that they need and they deserve. And I know for me, Faith Choice Ohio has been a place that has uplifted me as a faith leader and has uplifted and been a beacon of hope for many people who believe that everyone deserves to be free. So thank you again for your support.
Thank you. I neglected. What a treat. I neglected to mention to those who may be joining us online that you can contribute to Faith Choice Ohio by using the Cash App. Our handle is $UUCC44122. That's our zip code. So thank you in advance for your generous support. And if you would now join me in the acceptance of gifts on your yellow card as we accept the offering this morning. We offer these gifts with gratitude, and we acknowledge the constant gifts of time, talent, and treasure that strengthen and nourish this congregation. As a reflection of our commitment to community within and without, our purposeful spirituality that is ever searching and growing, and our intentional actions that lead to greater justice in our congregation, our city, our nation, and our world.
Okay. Hello. Hi. I am really happy to be here, and I just want to say getting ready for this has been a bit of a healing experience for me. As you heard a little bit ago, I'm really passionate about social justice, and oftentimes the faith spaces that I have been in have not been ones that have been supportive. And this is the first time in about 4 years that I've really been in a leadership position in a church space, and so thank you for allowing me to heal. I'm really glad to be in this space where I feel safe enough to process my trauma and be able to share some of my insights. So the last few years, as you can imagine, have been hard. If we take into account COVID, the uprisings for Black lives, the countless losses of human life, and the most brazen attacks on reproductive freedom of Americans, it can be hard to look at the future optimistically. And if we only consider reproductive freedom, it is clear that we have had many setbacks, and that can make it even harder. In June of 2022, we saw the writing on the wall that many people in the repro space knew was coming with the fall of Roe v. Wade. Then, as things were left to the states, we've seen many states, Ohio included, attempt and sometimes succeed in banning nearly all abortions, or at the very least have kept people from having clarity on what their rights are and how they can access them. And then, if you're keeping up with the news, just last week, there was a ruling that came down from Texas questioning the FDA's approval of mifepristone, one of the 2 medications used in many medical abortions across the US and the world. It can be really hard, it can feel really hard to work for a future of abundance and pleasure when so many long-standing systems of white supremacy and capitalism have made the world a worse place for many people. And I know this is kind of like a glum, sad way to start, but I want to start this way because I don't want to give a picturesque idea of what the future could be, that it'll come naturally to us, because so far it has not. So in the text for today, Adrienne Murray Brown, off of this book, Emergent Strategy, talks about the future that we can create together. She talks of this abundant and bright future of decolonization, and liberation and freedom. But what wasn't included in today's text was the image of the people who got us here, to where we are today. In this book that we're reading from, she talks a lot about how we get to a more liberated future. And as I began to prepare for today, I found myself thinking a lot about the past. It wasn't that long ago that things were a lot worse than they are now. You know, I think about how it was only less than 200 years ago that slavery was abolished. And it was less than 60 years ago that the Civil Rights Act happened. And it was 50 years ago that Roe v. Wade happened in the first place. And LGBTQ people didn't get access to marriage until like 8 years ago. Everything is so recent in the history of this country. So one can look at all these accomplishments and you can think that we've not progressed enough, or you can think that we're taking a step back in time in some instances. But I'm choosing to think about the people who got us here. In Emergent Strategy, Adrienne Marie Brown talks about Afrofuturism. And Afrofuturism refers to this resilience and assertion that has been represented many times in Black history and Black culture. She writes, "Lately, I've been obsessing over Afrofuturism and justice orientation of slave-era Blacks because our situation today feels so terrifying and exhausting and sometimes hopeless. And there's so much trauma and grief to bear, but yet we have survived that. Not individually, but collectively. Not all of those Black people were Afrofuturists, but to focus on Afrofuturists in the Black social justice tradition, I would note that Africans leaping off of slaver ships were Afrofuturists, slave-era parents teaching their babies a foreign alphabet in the candlelit dirt were Afrofuturists, Black women dissociating themselves to tomorrow while being raped into motherhood were Afrofuturists, those who raised children of violence and those who chose not to, all were predicting the future and articulating their choices. Slaves who ran to freedom and slaves who ran to their deaths were Afrofuturists. It is the emphasis on a tomorrow that centers the dignity of that seed, particularly in the face of extinction, that marks for me the Afrofuturist. And of course, there are the big ones, the ones who've made it through the erasers of history books into our mouths. Harriet, Sojourner, Frederick, John, Malcolm, James, Ella, Martin, Nina, June, Tony, Octavia. Now it is our work, and it is the exciting thing, about this time is that we are learning to name ourselves, our distinctions and solidarities, our Afrofuturisms and Black Springs, developing enough of a common dream language that we can be that much more explicit about the real futures we are shaping into existence. So when I think about how dismal and hard our present feels, I think about these Afrofuturists that came before me. I think about those people that struggled not knowing if they would live to see tomorrow. And I think about how they persevered and created a world that I can even dare to thrive in. And now we are the people that one day some future organizer will look back on. And they will look back and think, damn, they had it rough, but because of them, I can dare to thrive. And so even in the midst of this dark moment, I see glimpses of a future that Adrienne Marie Brown talks about. I see people choosing freedom despite attacks on LGBTQ rights. I see Black joy and Black beauty even in the midst of the fight for our lives. I see people radically talking about their abortions and continuing to provide for and show up for their communities despite every setback that we faced. And those are just the things that I get the opportunity to see. I think a lot also about what happens not just in our public lives, but and with each other, but also in the constant learning and growing that people do in their everyday lives. I think about how abolition used to feel much like a further off goal, which, I mean, I will admit it is still a ways away. But I hear people using the language of abolition in their daily lives. I think about how even despite the attacks on personal freedoms, my friends and community make space for us to feel free, even if it's only in our chosen families. I think about how, right now, I'm using the text of Adrienne Marie Brown in this setting, and that I even have the chance to talk about what it looks like to be free. We are a part of this long arc of the moral universe bending towards justice. And every time we take a step towards doing something better by each other, toward healing, we're creating a fertile ground for abolition, liberation, and true reproductive freedom. there's this concept that Adrienne Marie Brown uses a lot in her work. It's called transformative justice, and if you stick around a little bit later, we'll get more into transformative justice and restorative justice as concepts and what they look like. But as a teaser, transformative justice is a theory of justice that focuses on responding to harm and systemic issues without using violence and by employing acts of harm reduction. Transformative justice, oh my gosh, sorry. I read this, so like if I mess up the page, it gets really, okay. Anyway, so transformative justice often calls us not just to think about practices in the world that cause harm, but also what prompts people to do those things. So why do people hurt each other? Why do they exploit each other? What other things could be causing these issues that we see in our everyday lives, whether those are systemic or personal? And Adrienne Marie Brown continues, some of the key practices that show up in Octavia Butler's work, that Octavia Butler is like a big influence of Adrienne Marie Brown's. And in Octavia's Brood, which is a book that she wrote in collaboration with other people. So some of those key practices are collaboration, compassion, curiosity, romantic and sensual and non-possessive love, play, meditation, or mediation, and patience that comes from seeing ourselves in a much longer arc of time than we are encouraged to see in the instantaneous culture of the modern world. What I am really asking, what we were all really asking, what Octavia was asking, is how do we know, or how do we know the world needs change? Oh my gosh, my brain is... It's how do we, who know the world needs change, there we go, okay, begin to practice being different. So since we know that the world needs change, how do we practice being different? How do we have to be for justice to be truly transformative? Not them, not the massive amorphous them that is also us in our head and our hearts, or loves us, or is it tired of all of this, but is family to us, not them, because maybe we don't recognize yet what these changes are, that these changes are the key to human survival. But us who are awake and awakening, how do we need to be for Black Lives to Matter? What do we need to heal in ourselves in order to offer a future of any real peace, or become the protagonists of this human story and earn the flip of the page of all sentient life in the universe, to claim the future as a compelling place for our miracles? This is everything. And as we live in the light of the America that we live in, we have to think about where we are in this space. We have to think about how we heal ourselves in order to create an abundant future. What part of ourselves feels justified in wanting others to experience consequences like being arrested or imprisoned? What part of ourselves struggles with anger and is wanting ourselves, and what part of us is really in pain? I am of the belief that at the core of many of the issues and problems that we experience is an insecurity that we are afraid to bear to others, or a pain that we are unwilling to investigate or be able to heal. Going back to my title, there is a daily practice that goes into creating a new world. There is a daily work that we must do to be able to make the future possible. I like to think of myself as a complicated plant. When I'm sad when I don't get enough sunlight. I need to have plenty of water, as you might have seen my really big water bottle. And I need nourishment. And if I don't put myself in the right environment, I will struggle to thrive. Taking care of myself is not easy, and when I don't do it right, I notice withered spots. But to get to the future that I long for, I have to be willing to look. I have to be willing to be observant and make changes that will help me thrive. And as I take care of myself and I model that care for others, I don't lash out on others as much. As I care for myself, I become a better plant for the world. And as AMB talks about, Adrienne Marie Brown, I refer to her as AMB, talks about in emergent strategy, we are all like plants. And deep underneath the ground, our roots interconnect and weave together. Our healing is not independent of each other. And even in the face of the harsh environment that we find ourselves in, we remain woven together. As we face reproductive injustice, the way that we care for ourselves is reflected in how we support our neighbors and how we prepare ourselves to care for our communities. As we face LGBTQ violence, the way that we care for ourselves is reflected in how we choose to break from restrictions of the world and in the safety of our communities. As we face racial injustice, the ways that we care for ourselves show up in the ways that we reflect on our own actions, how we accept criticism, and how we uplift and support each other. To create this world without rape, without harassment, without constant fear and assault, without police and prisons, without war, without hunger, without violence, we have to start with ourselves. We have to examine and heal this ugly part inside of us that threatens to make us wither. We have to question why our leaves brown and where we need to prune so that we can grow into a beautiful garden of the future. It is us, it is our actions that make the abundant future that we are all longing for. I want to come back to this phrase that Adrienne Marie Brown uses as a way to kind of wrap up. We are creating a world we have never seen. We are whispering it to each other, cuddled in the dark. We are screaming it at people so scared that they dress themselves in war regalia to turn and face us. It is not easy to care for our complicated plant selves. It is not easy to work to thrive and prune and grow when we see others not doing that work themselves. It is not easy to give ourselves what we need when we live in such toxic environments. But we are cuddled in the dark, roots woven together, supporting each other in the midst of it all. Together, we are creating this healthy, thriving environment to grow in. Together, we can create a world of justice and pleasure. And the more we model the world we wish to see, the more we begin to see the future we long for. Amen and Ashe.
You would rise in body or spirit and join in our closing hymn, Building a New Way. Use the words in your order of service, which are specially designed for today's occasion. So as we close today, I
I just want to leave you with these words from Reverend Anna Blydell, but I also want to welcome you to come to the workshop right after the service, where I'll be talking more about restorative and transformative justice. So it's really like a continuation of what I just said. So I'm going to leave you with these words. Today, yes, even today, as fires rage and floods seethe, as so much and so many are inundated under water, under evacuation, under assault of too much for too long and not enough, too, as we are residing in such chasms of grief and exhaustion, of loneliness, of willful carelessness, of unmet need. Today, yes, even today, may beauty find, may gentleness soften, may care reach, may spirit soothe, and may life meet, and you, and you, and you, and us, in each broken open space, in each broken open heart, in this broken open world. And may we move forward together, rooted in the hope for a future that may seem impossible, but is possible with every tender step we take in the right direction. Amen.
Before we extinguish our chalice, I have a few reminders and announcements about activities coming up. This Thursday, April 20th, we have another Considering Membership session for anyone who's exploring becoming a member of the congregation. Please do register ahead of time so that we can plan accordingly. Next Sunday, Ministry for Earth will have a lot of easy next step possibilities for personal action around environmental justice. On April 30th, another exciting pop-up session for the McKim Fund proposals. A reminder, looking ahead to June, that we'll be worshiping together in Pittsburgh on June 25th with thousands of other UUs at General Assembly. If you want to be involved with transportation plans, please reach out to Reverend Randy. Registration for the next Journey 101 Spiritual Development Series is also happening right now. Find out more in your newsletter, or you can reach out to Reverend Randy directly about that also. The delegates to General Assembly, the National UU Conference, invite you to complete a survey. It's launching today, related to your opinions about the changes to the UU Principles and Purposes, otherwise known as Article 2. The survey can be engaged in one of three ways. There's an email with a link that'll arrive shortly. Use the QR code that's posted around the building, or you can go to the website. The delegates thank you in advance for your participation and also plan to attend the in-person meeting before the service on March 21st, where we will reveal the results of the survey. Finally, congratulations to the 6th grade at FDR Academy for having the best attendance in the past week at 85%. And you can help fill it in filling the 45 goodie bags, which will be delivered tomorrow. We are in week 3 of an 8-week project. Please join me in the extinguishing of the chalice words on your yellow card. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.